This meeting is being recorded.
There you go. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion. Today we have Maverick Huneycutt, Jacqueline Stowe, who's a board member of Restorative Justice. Now, Jacqueline, why don't you go ahead and introduce your friend and did you say classmate?
Obi, my friend here, my newfound friend is Obi Blackwell, and he is a graduate of Second Ward High School, 1962, Second Ward High School. And so we just recently met through my inquiries about getting yearbooks and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so, and he's a wonderful new friend that I found, and you mind me calling you a friend now?
Yeah.
we have a 1962 yearbook, and I'm in a classroom 7-1, and he's in the 12th grade in the same yearbook.
Wow.
Second Ward yearbook, yes.
Wow, that's beautiful. You know, it's interesting because one of the things that comes up is almost as if people want to act as if there aren't any survivors of Brooklyn. And it's funny how, you know, I keep stumbling across, you know, news stories. My family was in Fayetteville, and they met two individuals in Fayetteville who was from Brooklyn, and they had all these pictures and all this wonderful stuff. And it's one of those things that just, you know, continue to remind me how important this endeavor is. You know, I sincerely believe in my heart that something tragic happened to that neighborhood, Brooklyn and Second Ward, and it traumatized an entire community. And when we look at where Charlotte is today, we begin to realize that the current suffering among the African-American community as it pertains to the economy can be traced back quite easily to Brooklyn and urban renewal. And Maverick, I see you shaking your head to that point as well. Did you want to say something?
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, a lot of my focus towards like the later part of my research was about the business district. And I mean, just the fact that there were over 200 businesses that were just, you know, forced to relocate. And I think a large number of them weren't able to relocate because I think Brooklyn was the only place where they could do business. And once they were pushed out of there, it was hard for a lot of people to start back. And if you just take, I mean, say 50 of those businesses didn't be able to relocate, and take the profit of over 50 years that they weren't able to get once they weren't able to reopen again. That's a lot of money that Charlotte's African-American community has lost out on. And I know it was well over 50 businesses that didn't get to start again. So
yeah, and
you can only imagine when you look at it that way of how much of a toll that
yes
plays.
Well, you know, there was a gentleman from the real estate community, and he was one of the individuals who did get a chance to testify at the city council meeting. And his testimony was that $70 million of damage was being done in 1980 at the time of the city council meeting. $70 million. So now if you just use inflation rates, right, to calculate it from 1960 to 2022, we're talking about close to, because we did this during the time when we were looking at Brooklyn Village and the development, because that was around the $650 million total project. Brooklyn Village was is a community that is being put together by developers and the main developer is Don Peebles. It's the Peebles Corporation, and he is an African American. So we were caught in a little bit of conflict there because, on the one hand, we feel as though it's totally inappropriate to call it Brooklyn Village without there being any financial restitution paid to those who are from Brooklyn. But here he is, an African American, and African American developers don't get much opportunity in Charlotte. So we had some meetings with him, and here this guy is close to a billionaire, and he took 2 meetings with us, and we got a chance to talk and really, but my point was that this was a $650 million development. And it's ironic because when you look at the $70 million that the testimony says was destroyed, $70 million. Using the inflation to 2020 or 2019 at the time was around $640, $660 million. So that is the kind of economic opportunity that was lost in Charlotte. And Charlotte was the economic hub for Black business, you see? So, and I'm not telling, Jacqueline and her buddy this as if I'm teaching them something, but I'm saying this for the recording so people will know exactly what we're talking about here. But we're talking about a Black Wall Street, which is what it was called. And they had the beginning stages of, because Charlotte eventually becomes the center of banking. It's the second largest, maybe the third largest banking center in America, with assets, $7 to $8 trillion, right? But Blacks were in the center of that, and they had the Mecklenburg Investment and Trust. They were creating their own banking opportunities, and so all of that now is destroyed. The center of Black business now is scattered, and is scattered in a way in which it interfered with the economic progress of a whole community. Now, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Say your name one more time. Is it Henry?
Obi. Oh, you talking about Obi? O-B-E-Y.
O-B-I-E.
O-B-I-E, I'm sorry, Blackwell.
Yeah, Jacqueline and Obi Blackwell. Jacqueline Stowe and Obi Blackwell. Now, as I began to talk, as we were just talking there, and I love the fact that we can have this kind of dialogue because, again, we have Maverick Huneycutt, who's now has a passion for this. And that's perfect because what starts out as an academic exercise becomes something that now he's passionate about. But then I got involved in sort of a professional, but it was right up my alley because I've always, I'm an NAACP guy. I'm the first vice president. When I left Charlotte, I was the first vice president of the NAACP there. I was also the executive member and chaired a big committee in the New Jersey NAACP. So those things catch my attention. You want to get my attention? Talk about historical wrongs, and then to have you guys who lived it and probably still have memories and images. Like, is that true? Is that true? Like when you, even to this day, and it's been 60 years, I bet you still have fresh, fond memories of Brooklyn. Do you still dream about it?
I wouldn't say dream about it, think about it a lot. I do, because for example, my granddaughter, who is in her senior year A&T, North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. She and I went downtown Charlotte the other day. And I said to her, we tried to find a parking space I wanted to actually walk the grounds of the NASCAR museum and, and just feel it again.
Right.
That's what I wanted to feel. I was explaining to her, I had talked with her before about that. We lived there and that was our neighborhood. That was the Brooklyn neighborhood. And just seeing it now, the way it has developed now, and then they had the banners up there and that sort of thing, the NASCAR Hall of Fame. It's just surreal. It's just surreal to stand up there and look at the city of Charlotte in the Brooklyn community now. I mean, and then think about what it was then. It and then I can't say that I'm going home. My roots were destroyed. They were erased. People say, I'm going home for Christmas. I'm going this. Well, my home is right where I'm sitting now. That's the only home I can identify with now, even though it's in Charlotte. Quote, I live right off Lawyers Road, but I can't identify with Brooklyn now because it's not there the way it used to be. We have no identification there at all. And it sort of ticks me off sometimes to see it called Brooklyn Village and all this kind of stuff. And how dare you call it Brooklyn Village and not even acknowledge that other people lived in Brooklyn prior to that, and we have nothing to identify with. It's just shameful. It really is. And then they talk about, you mentioned Peebles and BK Partners and that sort of thing. They talked about how affordable they were going to do affordable housing. So I'm living off Social Security. So how am I going? I want to get affordable housing. My home, I'm sitting here right now, it was shot into. I had 20 plus bullet holes in my house about 2 years ago, where I was in my bed sleep. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up. I heard all this noise. I jumped fell out the bed on the floor. And my brother, his room is upstairs. Anyway, the neighbors are having a party or something. And long story short, I ended up with 21 bullet holes in my house through the artwork, through the walls, through the kitchen, through the hallway, through the sofa, and my pillow and everything. Right where I'm sitting right now, the bullet hole went through the sofa, through the anyway.
What? You wasn't home that night?
I was at home. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And the
wow.
neighbors, this is what I woke up to. My point is this. Okay, in these brochures and all this stuff, what I've read about BK Partners and Peoples and all that, they talking about they were going to have affordable housing for people. Now, what's affordable housing? I'm a former Brooklyn resident. If I want to get a safe place, and I'm assuming that is a safe place, what would be affordable there that I can afford? Because the racial discrimination was all around us. The corporation I worked for, I retired from Bell South. They had their racial issues within itself. You know, we even had to form a committee for minority and female affairs because they didn't promote Black people fairly. So when you retire with the income you made, whether it was racially discriminated against or not, if you understand what I'm saying. So my point is this: what is it? These people talking about who lives there like me, that was in the situation that I was in. I thank God for bringing me this far. I thank God for it. But it's just bothersome for them to use the name and then talk about what they are going to do or what they have done or what the plan is. And people like myself, and I know others, what did they do for us? The word accountability keeps coming up. Went to the meeting the other day and they talked about accountability. Who lives in there that were racially discriminated against, that look like me? Who lives there? And how much money did they make? What did it's crazy. Go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So when you talk
And
about when you say accountability, I like, give me some more. I mean, like, what comes to mind when you say that? Like when you say accountability,
well, they said,
what?
for example, they said they were going to make affordable housing. They said they're going to have affordable housing in the Brooklyn Village, in that scheme of theirs, the plan that they have.
Mhm.
So if they say they were going to have affordable housing, what is affordable? If you're talking about affordable housing, I'm thinking they using Brooklyn's name as it used to be Brooklyn Village, and it's a historical area of Charlotte. Well, it's not. They erased our our community. The community was erased. Second Ward High School. I'm looking at the 1962 yearbook right now, where they had classes that were in journalism, auto mechanics, homemaking, food. You know what? And
So
and
they were trying to prepare people, and for because that's another thing. I don't mean to cut you off. Not only do people talk about the business community and the economics there that were lost, the other thing that people talk about is the educational and the culture
that's
of
right.
people talk about that a lot. And Pamela Grundy in her book, I think it's called Color and Character.
Character, West Charlotte,
Yeah.
and the struggle over educational equality.
Yes.
That's a great
And she
book.
came out of church and she did a presentation, and we had some people from Brooklyn, and it was a church. It was we used an all-white church that was predominantly white, that's in Still Creek. They joined with us, and we talked about it, and people still remembered of the quality of education, and they talk about social capital.
That's right.
See, we could put a number on the economics, right? We just use a mathematical, talking about inflation. But how do you qualify or quantify the social capital that was
lost? That's right, because they even had an underground economy. I was a little girl, but trust me, we knew what was going on. It was a booming underground economy back then in the day with the bootleg house and liquor house. How many bars are there in downtown Charlotte now? Think about all those bars in Charlotte, and then I think about when I was a little girl. The people in the neighborhood, I'm going down to so-and-so house, get me a 50-cent drink. I remember a 50-cent drink.
Yeah.
And then they had the gambling house. Yeah, so it was, and then they had the doo-wop boys, the singers on the block. It was, I'm telling you,
It was
they
a whole
took away
culture.
our whole,
yeah, go ahead.
there was a whole culture there.
Yeah. The pride that's no longer, that gets reduced over time. What starts out as a people of pride, right? We're from Brooklyn, we're from Second Ward, we're somebody and we're gonna be somebody. There's a level of pride there. But then when you get pulled up like a tree and pulled up and then taken somewhere, and they try to replant you as a community.
Yep. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And I was on the track, being inducted into the Honor Society and all this kind of stuff. We were on the fast track. And being in the Brooklyn community, we had our own Ebonics language. And I'll never forget when I was in the 6th grade, our teacher, Mr. Harris, I think about that sign that says now NASCAR Hall of Fame, a living legend, some of the big names of living legends for NASCAR. Okay, my living legend that was in Brooklyn was my high school teacher. And I remember one incident, Mr. Harris, he said he was teaching us how he was teaching us about the King's English, because we had our own Ebonics in the community. And for example, he said, well, one word that was pronounced, I'll never forget this. He said one word that was always mispronounced. You said mayonnaise. I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? Mayonnaise,
Yeah.
but it was mayonnaise. I make me a mayonnaise sandwich.
Mayonnaise. You just put it all
Mayonnaise.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you,
Yeah. So Mr. Obi, tell us about your memories.
Well, for me, I didn't ever live in Brooklyn, and
Okay.
the only thing that was I went from I lived in Greertown. We went from Greertown to Second Ward. That was the only communication we had with Brooklyn. We went to school. Occasionally, we had the chance to go to the theater, the Savoy Theater, or occasionally go down to the House of Prayer. But that's all of that. That's the only time we really visit Brooklyn. But you know, we hear about Brooklyn and with Second Ward and all that stuff that they taught us back then. The kids are not getting that in school this year. Because they auto mechanic, shoe repair,
that's right.
brick mason,
Mason, yep.
and that was taught in the school, in the black schools. But now, but I know, is that being taught in the schools this daytime?
I don't
I don't think so. I think with all of the cuts, you know, the economic cuts that they had to eliminate some of those. What do you call them? Home economics. Remember this?
Home economics.
Yeah.
And then they have Johnson and Wales. We have a Johnson, and I'm not trying to discount anything, but we had Johnson Wales downtown now, but they had to knock out home economics at Second Ward. They didn't seem to think teaching cooking was relevant. And there again, how many bars and restaurants do we have downtown Charlotte now in Brooklyn?
Back then, they taught the girls how to sew.
How many of them are owned by African Americans?
Yeah.
How many bars?
That'd be the question. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that's and I bet you it would be because I know for a fact the Chamber of Commerce of South Park, up until maybe last year, or no, maybe 2 years ago, because I know there's a barbershop moved into the South Park Mall. There was only one black business, and he's a member of the Restorative Justice Board, according to the Chamber of Commerce. And that's, so, yeah. So what else do you remember?
Not too much that I remember Brooklyn, because we didn't spend any time down there. You went to school and you went home. You left out of there. But just then being down in Brooklyn, we wasn't back then. You didn't hang out like that. If you didn't live in that community, you didn't go there.
Right. I remember the churches. Churches, Friendship and Missionary Baptist Church. My church is Bethel AME Church on Brevard Street. And the Friendship Baptist Church, it was also on Brevard and First Street, I believe. Then it was the House of Prayer. I remember those three churches specifically because they had activities for the children to do in the summer times. All the churches. I remember the House of Prayer because of the parade, the Daddy Grace Parade.
Yep.
Oh my God. And my cousin, my cousin was a fan girl. Her job was to actually get up there and fan the bishop. And that's what I still remember those long fingernails.
Yeah.
Those long fingernails.
I remember that.
Oh my God. And Obi and I were talking on the way over here. We were talking about going into the church itself and the way they would collect the money. They had these big old tin buckets that the people would throw the money in. Oh my gosh, it was something else. But
I know it was.
It really was. And the praise. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it was just exciting. It was just plumb exciting. And but what happened to me was we have in our local church, even to this day, what's called a YPD, the Young People Department. And I was actually, myself and my brothers and sisters, by us having to move, we lost that experience. We lost the YPD experience from my church, because when we moved, we didn't have, when the church was bulldozed down or whatever, it took a couple of years to relocate. And then we was sort of like had to call, and one of my church members, I was having a conversation, but she said she still remember the boxes, the cardboard boxes that we had to sit on outside to have worship service. And it was word of mouth where we were going to worship at next and that sort of thing. And so it took from 1963 to several years to get back settled. My point for me and my family is we lost the YPD experience, the young people experience, because that's where they taught character and value and that sort of thing with the young people.
Wow.
You
feel as though that loss impacts the whole community? Like when you think of some of the things that they were teaching, do you feel as though that's something that's lost in today?
Yes, you had to grab at straws. You have to, you have to figure out what's right, what's good in it, and what's right, and what's the perfect will of God. Your spirit kicks in. Your inner spirit kicks in, and right from wrong and that sort of thing. But in church, values are taught in church, and so even having the experience of communicating and working together and knowing how to socialize for social events and different things like that, I sort of had to learn it on my own. If you had a social connection in school and in church, there was a social connection that was lost for my family and friends, because we had to uproot and leave. And you're a child and you go into another community, you sort of on your own for a long time. And if you have experienced
so they didn't try to coordinate the communities or anything like that?
What?
That's a rhetorical.
We didn't have internet. We didn't have the internet. We didn't even have a telephone. It was word of mouth back in the day.
Yeah,
it was word of mouth.
How were you?
And see, the thing of it is, I was on.
Go ahead.
Well, no, you froze up. I didn't get to hear your question. How are you?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, how were you guys notified of it? Like, when did you first find out that they were tearing down Brooklyn?
I guess it would have been word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because I was 11, 12 years old. And so next thing I know, we were having to move. And I remember my mother and dad, and it was 12 of us at the time, 12 children in a little house. And I remember them packing up our stuff on the truck. Because I remember asking my mom one day years later, I said, whatever happened to our pictures? Because I remember a picture of myself sitting on a little table. I must have been about 2 years old, 18-month-old. And she said that our pictures and stuff were lost. They fell off the truck and got misplaced and all that. So everything I have is in my mind now. It's just in my mind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Maverick, through your research, did you encounter any information that tells the story of how the people of Brooklyn were informed?
Yeah, I think there were like letters sent out, and then people definitely knew that the government was trying to do this, but there was really no way for like the community of Brooklyn to voice their concerns. I think I found like a couple little posters where like the Brooklyn community came together, and I'm pretty sure it was at Bethel AME, where they had a meeting where they wanted to voice their concerns about their community getting destroyed. And for the most part, though, I think it was really just word of mouth. People found out that they were going to have to move out. And then, like I said, the redevelopment commission started coming around, and they would offer people, like, if you actually owned your house, they would offer you, you know, like the very minimum amount they could offer you. But for the most part, people were renting from, you know, absentee white landlords, and those guys got paid whatever their fair share was worth, and the rentees just had to move on wherever they could find a place pretty much. And the relocation was not well done. They gave a little bit of money to the families, but it wasn't enough. I recall one interview with a Barbara Steele. She was saying like the worst thing about it was that people didn't get enough money to get a new house and to make a new life for themselves once they got kicked out of Brooklyn. And that was the worst thing to me. Is it's if you're gonna do something like this, and like you said, they made no effort to relocate the community together. And someone said that they said they would have tried to relocate Brooklyn people with each other, it might not have been so bad, because they probably could have, you know, remade their community at least somewhat. But people were just scattered all over Charlotte, and that was the problem. That was why the culture got lost, in my opinion.
Lost. And one of my church members, Mr. Lois Moore, she's still living to this day, and she said I remember what she said, they promised to help us, but they never did.
Yeah.
They promised to help us,
well,
but
you know,
they never did.
If you look, there is some information about, I want to say the FHA. Who was behind the urban renewal? Was it FHA?
HUD. It was HUD, wasn't it?
HUD.
HUD?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
HUD had, I think once they gave them the money to do the urban renewal, part of the urban renewal proposal, I guess the RFP or whatever it was at the time, they even, not only did they make promises to the Black community, but there were things that were laid out in the urban renewal. That's another thing. I wonder, make a note of that, Maverick. I wonder if we can get a copy of that actual, the specifics of what the urban renewal, because I know that several years later, HUD threatened to take the money back or not give them as payments. They did not build the promised alternative housing that they said they would. Basically, like in the proposal, which is what still happens around communities so often. These proposals are written in grand fashion. However, soon after the ribbon is cut and everybody gets paid, everybody disappears, and people are left holding the bag. And in this case, they did not follow through with the promises. And urban renewal, HUD threatened to penalize them. So then what they did was they, in my opinion, and others will say this, they hurriedly put up Earl Village.
Yeah.
And when they put up Earl Village, we all know what happened to Earl Village. You guys know what happened to Earl Village, right? It was ultimately torn down. It was torn down.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was torn down. Yeah, it was torn. So now again, so think about that. There were people who were relocated from Brooklyn through eminent domain. And then those very same people that were relocated and now living in Earl Village, when Earl Village became unlivable, or when there were decisions enforced upon them, they had to move. So now that's 2 times people have been relocated. You know, the tragedy and pain of one relocation, but then imagine having to be uprooted. So then people say that for the 3rd time, people just said, you know what, because the highway, and, you know, they were building highways through, like there were people who moved to, like, let's say, for example, Dixie. There's a Black neighborhood by the airport out there, but it's in Charlotte. Once they build the highways, is it either 85 or 77,
Mhm.
he received eminent domain notices as well.
What happened to you? Did it not, Miss Stowe? Your second home was taken out by 77.
That is correct. It's
Yeah.
77 to this day. Right there, you can go. You can if you're in the stadium at Johnson C. Smith, you can see 77. So my house, where we live, my address, I'll never forget, 319 Andrew Terrace. I still have my little card, my little West Charlotte High School ID card with the address 319 Andrew Terrace on it. Anyway, the next street up was Summit Avenue. My good friend Priscilla lived on Summit Avenue, and then it was Johnson C. Smith University. And so next thing we know, we had to wow, you had to move again, you know, and that's so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and the thing about it is, again, the areas of Myers Park and those areas remain untouched.
Yeah.
And then you know what else, Dr. Keaton? Because I remember when Myers Park residents have roots to this day. They can, because I remember.
Yeah,
They talk about, you know, Freedom Park. Freedom Park was there, and like I was telling somebody that they erected Freedom Park for veterans, and we couldn't even go. My dad and granddad, they were veterans, but you know, segregation. We couldn't go to Freedom Park. You would get arrested if you.
Wait. So you're saying to me that they fought in the war?
They fought in the war,
but couldn't visit the monument that was set up for them in Freedom Park.
That is correct. Little black jacket couldn't go over there. You get arrested. That's right. My family could not get arrested. And I remember it was a few months ago, my friend and I, we were sitting out there where that train is. Y'all go out there where that train is to this day at Freedom Park, and they got this sign up there and everything. And it was a white couple that came past us, and they were talking about how the members, it just take us back in the day. And we said it couldn't be back in the day for us because we wasn't allowed to come over here. We can't, and then they were apologizing and stuff. It wasn't their fault, but you know, I don't have memories like the Myers Park people have memories, and that happens more than one time. We were sitting under that sound booth one day, and it was this nice young white guy. He was on his bike, and he stopped to talk to people. Stop to talk to you. Good people. They're good white people. They're good black people. They're good, you know. And so, and they know, and it's terrible. And see, they would. He said, "Lord, I love this place," but I can't say that because now I sit there. And we couldn't come to Freedom Park, although my granddad and my dad had fought in World War I and World War II, and they erected Freedom Park, 98 acres of Freedom Park. And I couldn't even take, my daddy couldn't even take us to Freedom Park. They couldn't even take us to Freedom Park.
That's crazy because one of the things I've noticed is, you know, just how treacherous and cruel racism was. I mean, that's
terrible. Let me tell you about this. Even you know how they talk about lunch count of sit-ins and all that kind of stuff. I'll never forget. Right down below Johnson C. Smith, there was this little place called Igloo. It was a walk-up little like a little place you can get ice cream and hot dogs. Well, if you're black, you had to get your stuff at the outside, and then if you're white, you can go in and sit down. And we would get off the bus. We would get off the bus and go in there, order stuff from the outside. I'll never forget this. We order stuff from the outside, and then we'll go inside, and they will run us out. And this happens.
And it's so crazy because you are so. You know, you're young and vibrant. I mean, you know, it's not like you're telling stories of something that happened 100 years ago. I mean,
it happened 100 years ago. I remember. Even this place called Crest. It was downtown. It was just so funny because we were going to Crest department store. You couldn't go to the counter. Nope. And so one time, my friend, we used to do these devilish things, and my friend had a little baby doll arm. You know how you have she had broken off the baby doll, and when she went to pay for her stuff at the end of the counter, she had the baby doll arm and reached it to pay her stuff, and the lady screamed. She thought it was the woman's real arm.
Wow.
But we used to get run out the Woolworths downtown. They run us out of places.
But you know, that's the imagination of a, you know, like of a child, you know, the children and young people. Like here, this was something, you know, that is just historically wrong and meant to, you know, destroy the ambition of a person and cause them, you know, psychological shame and pain. And here you guys made a game of it and was. Now, Mr. Obi, do you remember, what's your memories of Greertown? Because I've done some work in Greertown. I've, you know, with Brother James and my good friend pastors, Greer Heights Presbyterian Church, and a member of the board, Reggie Tuggle.
Bill Henderson, Cordell Kennedy,
Who?
Lloyd Morris, Raymond Worsley.
Well, those are some of the people back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yeah, tell me about the tell me, because I know Myers Park is right next to Greer Heights.
Well, Greer Heights was like a community in itself, and
but it's right next to the wasn't Greer Heights originally built as sort of the servant community to Myers Park?
Well, when I moved to Greer Heights, it was, you know, I don't know anything way back when, but it was like, Greer Heights was named after Arthur Greer.
Mm.
They,
The funeral,
funeral home, yeah.
Okay.
And they bought the land where Greer Heights Church is now. They donated the land. But in Greer Heights alone, you had the older people watching out for you.
Mhm.
If you did something, somebody saw you.
Mhm.
That's right.
And before you could get home, your parents knew about it.
Mm-mm.
That's why they say you take a village to raise a child.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
back in the day, that's the way it was.
So you had to get 2 switches that day, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
You got
eat at anybody's house. I mean, people fix food.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you know, it was just like they say, it take a village to raise a child. That's where it was. But now out there now, nobody hardly know anybody. It's changed a whole lot. They have built a whole lot of, they say affordable houses, but you know, we are not in them.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Maybe out of all the houses they built, those new houses, it may be 3 or 4 of us living in them.
Yeah, I want to know what the affordable houses in Brooklyn Village. What I would love for
Well,
somebody
there's
to tell.
that many. I don't think there is. I think there's a total of
2.
there's a total of 15
What?
total or 20. No, 10% total affordable housing. But 5% of that is for seniors, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm saying,
So
over here saying,
10%.
how can we get up in there?
You can't.
That's what I'm.
You have, well, I mean, again, it's affordable, but here's the thing:
What's
they use
affordable?
median income, right? So you take the African American, because the ends of the spectrum are so, the gap is so large. The economic gap between white and black is so large in Charlotte that when you try to average the average median income, it really impacts the blacks who are making, again, Charlotte is the hardest place in America to escape poverty. And that is the African economy that is bringing it down. Yeah, so statistically, according to Raj Chetty and the authors, I think they're out of Harvard, it's the hardest place in America to escape poverty.
I believe that.
So that means it's a black economy that is holding all the numbers down, because we know, because of the map that they've done to help us to understand where the poverty is located. So they have a map, and they call it the wedge and the wedge and the crescent. So the crescent is the areas outside of uptown where all the poverty is located. But in the wedge, that's where all the prosperity is, right uptown, and that's uptown. And guess what? That used to be Black. And all of the wealth now is predominantly found in that area, the wedge. And that was predominantly African American, but now that area is now predominantly white.
That's crazy.
Now,
you know,
so, so that's why the average median income is so hard to attain. Even so, it'd be the African Americans who move into Charlotte who may be able to qualify. However, it's hard for them to qualify because they don't have the residency time that's needed. So in Charlotte, you have on paper affordable housing that's offered, but the reality is that most of the displacement and gentrification is happening because of the white prosperity able to devour the home and the real estate aggressively, because
that's crazy.
And with the Black, we cannot compete, right? And we cannot. So think about it. The housing market in Charlotte is considered one of the tops in the country. You know, maybe not now, you know, because of everything that's going on in these last couple of days, but leading up to the even in the pandemic, it was one of the most sought after real estate markets. And that tells us that predominantly it added to the white prosperity, in my opinion. And I think the research suggests that, because the homes that have been...
Oh, what happened?
Oh,
okay.
Sorry about that. The homes that have been sold in Charlotte now, I saw an article recently that 1 in 4 of those homes have been sold by a developer. So there's a lot of flipping, quote unquote, right? Speculating, buying up houses, selling them, buying up houses. So they're going to the Black neighborhoods, and they're being bought out. They're being bought out. And now those areas that were historically Black, those areas now are going to be historically white. So Greertown, where they built affordable housing, and some other outside agencies helped to do that. And I know the leadership, and I know they have great intentions, but because of, because of the Black economy, even when you try to present an affordable situation, the Blacks cannot take advantage of it because they've been economically oppressed for so long. So now in Greer Heights, those homes that were built that were supposed to help towards affordable housing, those homes are now selling for $300,000-$400,000.
Yeah.
And so now when you begin to reevaluate the home property, evaluate the property, everybody's taxes go up. And you begin to push people out because they can't pay their taxes, or they are forced to sell. And those homes that are sold are then, minimal. They do some repairs, but they turn around and they flip them. And that is the situation that we have in Charlotte. We have a historically Black community that helped build Charlotte. The thing about it is, the more you study, the more troubling it is.
It is. It's very troubling.
The more you study, troubling it is, because Charlotte at one point was 40% slave population. That's how much they depended on slavery, because the textiles and cotton and tobacco and all that stuff, all of that was the manual labor, as you know, was done through slavery. So when it's time for Emancipation Proclamation and it's time to free the slaves, who's fighting the hardest? Mecklenburg County. They had to send a Union army here to protect the free blacks. So we like to think as if the policies of urban renewal, the policies of redlining, the policies of restricted deeds, mass incarceration of African Americans, urban renewal. Sometimes people want to think about those things as if those were just policies with good intentions that turned out to have bad results. But we realize and we know that that's not true because of the culture of hatred that was right here in Mecklenburg County. And Mecklenburg County just produced a report, 185 years of systemic racism. But now what we have to do is, and Maverick, help me out with this. Now what we have to do is, we have to look at what happened in Brooklyn and Second Ward in relationship to the 185 years systemic racism report that was released by the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library, commissioned by Mecklenburg County commissioners.
My goodness. That's why I can't figure out Mayor Vi Lyles, how she omitted and neglected the ones of us who lived through this and who are still living. It's almost like we're still being ignored. It's not right. It just simply is not right. And it was the money, the $250 million, and not even one penny of it earmarked to go to the former Brooklyn residents who were directly impacted by it all and still living and now dealing with high taxes and stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna pay my house taxes and how I'm gonna eat and different things like that. And then living off of social security, retired from a company that racism was a part of. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And then the living, you go downtown to your roots and they talk about living legends. Dang, I guess we ain't no living legend. But anyway.
No, it's you have to sometimes
insanity.
laugh to keep from. Sometimes you have to laugh.
It's not right.
Yeah. So Maverick, what's your thoughts on the systemic racism report and or just the idea of a confirmed 185 years of systemic racism established by the county? What should be the local leadership, in your opinion, what should be the local leadership approach now that we've confirmed there's been 185 years of systemic racism?
That's heavy.
So when you first started talking about that, the thing that I thought of was that the African American community, that wasn't for them. You know what I mean? They don't need to read that's been happening for the past 200 years. Because they know. They know. They've been living it every day. Their grandparents lived it. Their great grandparents lived it. What this is for is, like you said, for those local lawmakers that have no idea what it's like to be oppressed and what it's like to grow up in an oppressive society, in a closed society like a Jim Crow South was. And I think maybe giving them some context will give them an idea of how hard it has been. As far as a fix, I really don't know, because I feel like the problem is just so massive right now. But like Ms. Stowe said, they have made an attempt with the $200 million but it's almost like a joke in my mind. Number one, didn't they get some lady who's like being investigated for fraud to handle that $200 million?
But she's
And
not
on the
around
second hand,
anymore.
like you said, there's no earmark for the former residents of Brooklyn or
Nothing.
their
Zero.
you know what I mean? Like the people who
What
are
is-
actually impacted by all those houses being cleared are getting none of that
That's
money. And that's
None.
yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing, and they don't want to.
It's not
Uh,
right.
They don't even want to talk about it, and and that's again, what we have to always remember and keep in mind and keep teaching is that what happened in Brooklyn, what happened in Charlotte, is part of a larger
Oh, yeah.
play that was at work, and that was to keep America segregated, and that was the in 1898 they had they call it the campaign of white supremacy, right? But then in the 1950s, you had this romantic return to the ideals of the romantic ideals of the Confederacy, which is to keep people segregated because we're monsters and we're dirty and we got to be segregated, and we don't want their children to spoil, the pure white morals of our children. And so they talked about segregation, and I believe it was George Wallace in one of his famous speeches, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, or something to that extent. And in Charlotte, as we know, a place where, the grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan was at one point running the politics.
Wow.
So, and then you have Julius Chambers and the lawyers that were here, their homes were being firebombed. So there was hatred
Alexander
here.
family.
Yeah, NAACP president, so there was hatred here. Let's not make it seem as though urban renewal happened because, we had good intentions, but we made the wrong, no. They had bad intentions from the start.
It was intentional.
And they packaged it in urban renewal, but the disproportionate outcomes that happens in Charlotte happens because of racism and this idea of not sharing opportunity and wealth and prosperity with its Black brothers and sisters. Wait a minute, let me say this. I want to make sure I can say this. Who helped build Charlotte?
Oh, not help build, they did build it.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I mean, right. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my brother, who built Charlotte.
Yeah.
Who built Charlotte? You got to understand that. You got to understand that when the Industrial Revolution begins to really pick up steam, it's the railroads.
Yep.
It's
Who
the
built
railroads. And who built the railroads? It was Black people. We did the hard labor. We did it through what they call leasing, convict leasing. Convict leasing. So the slave patrols that were robust here, once slavery became illegal, then these same slave patrols were hired out by plantation owners, who then these slave patrols went and they would charge people with, silliness and take them down to the jail, and the plantation owners would come in and bid on them like they were still in slavery. And that's who did the work. So the Blacks built the railroad, and they wouldn't allow the Blacks to even ride on the railroad.
It's just insanity. Wow. Whew.
And then people want to know why Charlotte is last in upper mobility. Well, Charlotte is last in upper mobility because Charlotte-Mecklenburg County has a 185-year proven track record of oppressing African Americans and stealing their opportunities and not sharing the opportunity. So when Dr. King says, you know, the Negro has been left with a not a check but a promissory note, left with a promissory note marked insufficient funds. In other words, what he's saying is this was a joint venture in building. We built the White House, the inventions. We fought in the wars, all of it, a joint venture. The first person to die in the Revolutionary War was a Black man named Crispus Attucks. This was a joint venture. And so at the end of the project, when we start to divvy up the assets, the whites run away with the bag and the Blacks are left holding a promissory note marked insufficient funds. And here we are in 2022, still going to the bank trying to collect. And they're still telling us that there are no funds available. And I think that is, to me, that's unacceptable. And I think that's why God, you know, but anyway, that's another conversation for another day. So Maverick, I know we're about an hour in.
Let me say something real quick. I just wanted to throw some hard evidence that what you just said. This is from an interview with John Thrower. He was on the Charlotte City Council during the urban renewal projects. And he says, I'm going to say this, and I hope you don't use it, which is a joke because it's a recorded interview. But the point is, Black people smell differently because they simply didn't have the facilities to remain clean, and it was a problem. This was a man on the Charlotte City Council who was voting for urban renewal, and you can't tell me that that decision did not have racist overtures when this man was saying stuff like that, who made the decisions. And that once I found that right there, that is when I was like, I'm running with this project and I'm giving it all the effort I have, because it was just disgusting to me. And
so what's next for your project? Tell us a little bit about your project. What's next? Tell us what you've been doing. We've had our last discussion. And what I'd like to do is between the three of us, you know, Jacqueline, you know, you keep finding people for us to talk to from Brooklyn.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep scheduling these kinds of conversation and we'll just keep talking about it. I'll create the content and we'll keep putting it out there for us to continue to keep this conversation alive. So tell us, Maverick, what you've been doing, what you've been up to. What do you feel God is saying to you about what's next for you?
Well, I just accepted my position in the UNCC history master's program. So I'm going to be starting that in the fall.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I plan to keep running with my Brooklyn project for my thesis, for my master's thesis. And Jacqueline, you said something. You said that there was a social identity and a cultural identity in Brooklyn, and that just like gave me so much hope, because what I wrote about in my senior capstone was that Brooklyn lost their culture. Like residents lost the cohesive culture that they had. I mean, they had schools, they had a library, they had businesses, they had everything they needed was right in Brooklyn, and they had lost every single bit of that. And so I want to just keep going with that. I want to expand my 20-page paper into a 40-page paper and then keep going with it from there. And I think this could easily be a book. I mean, there's books written about West Charlotte, and there's a little book. I don't know if you know about this. It's Thriving in the Shadows by Fannie Flono. It's the Black experience in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. And she writes a little bit about Brooklyn. And Dr. Tom Hanchett, his Sorting Out the New South City, he writes a little bit about Brooklyn.
That one.
Yeah,
but
he's got a nice.
There's not a cohesive work on Brooklyn. And I think Brooklyn is important enough to need that cohesive work. When you look at the race riot in Tulsa, I mean, that race riot has, I would say, probably 50 published works all about it. And where no one maybe got shot in Brooklyn, but these people lost, like you said, you lost your roots. You don't have a place to call home anymore.
Yeah,
And I think that's an important story that people need to
it's
hear.
a very important story. And it's what you understand is that I like to say in Tulsa, they use bombs. Tulsa, they use bombs and bullets. In Brooklyn, they use bulldozers.
Bulldoze.
I love
That is
that.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's again.
And my grandson,
Go ahead.
oh, I said my grandson said it was just like Wilmington, the massacre, but they just didn't kill us.
Yeah.
In Tulsa,
Yeah.
it was just like Tulsa, but they just didn't kill us.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Brooklyn, I thought you were talking about Wilmington is also, that was I think Tulsa was 1911 and Wilmington was 1898.
1898. Yep.
And so, and my family, they threw a lot of bodies in the Cape Fear River, and my grandmother used to take me fishing in the Cape Fear River. And that town in Wilmington was a black town, but it was called Brooklyn.
Wow.
That Wilmington, that fight in Wilmington started in a town called the blacks had created called Brooklyn. So, but Maverick, let's talk, because you got 20 pages. I got at least 100 pages. Maybe we can put together this published book and go ahead.
There we go.
Yeah. Maybe have Jacqueline write the foreword,
I'm gonna write my own book too.
I like it.
Yeah,
I got some good notes.
Yeah. So let's continue to talk. Let's continue to push it forward. One of these days, Charlotte is going to open up again, and we're going to be right there on the ground, organizing like we started doing in 2019. So
I have a question though before we close. So I would just like to go to a meeting downtown where the mayor is going. What is those meetings they call? Anyway, I want to know the city council meeting. Yeah, I would like to.
I wrote a note. I wrote a note to ask you if you wanted to attend a city council meeting with me.
Yeah, I'd like to attend one because I want to know why they just. Yes, I would like to attend one.
Yeah, okay.
And if they would give me 2 minutes, that would be fine, or whatever they want to give me.
I think they're still by Zoom, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look for it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
And Maverick, you were saying the name of that book is Thriving in the. You mentioned the name of the book. And who is it by again?
It's Fanny make sure I get it right. Fanny Flono, Flono. She works, I think it says she works for the Observer. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Also, Jacqueline, I'm gonna send you an email. And one day I would love for me and you to set up a meeting and just talk for like 20-30 minutes and just talk about some more of your memories for my.
I will. I can drag a couple of friends along with me. I know
Yeah,
some people.
that would be great. That would be great. I wanted to ask y'all about the Queen City Classic, because I know both of y'all. Yep. So I know those are some good times. So I'll send you an email and we'll get that set up for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So great job.
Right.
We'll talk soon.
All right,
Nice meeting y'all.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Hey, nice meeting you, Mr. Obi.
Nice meeting you.
Okay, bye.
Nice meeting you,
Bye-bye.
sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.